and welcome back to another BobBlast. Hi, I'm Bob Burridge, and this one is about one of the studio techniques I love to use in my studio to get these bubbles. Why do I want to get these bubbles? So I can turn them into some kind of a loose flower technique. How do I do it? Isopropyl alcohol. Isopropyl alcohol, it can be 99%, it can be 60%, doesn't really matter, but you start off with gessoed surface. This is watercolor paper, but I make sure I gesso it, a good gesso. After it dries, I put a color on it. So in this case, we're putting orange gesso. This is gold gesso. Woo, gold gesso, let it dry. And then after it's dried, you're gonna take a coat of paper, and paint, and just splash it on so it's real runny. And then you splash on some isopropyl alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and you get this. Why do this? All heck breaks loose because there's no way you can control it. Then start adding colors to it, and let it dry in between colors. Let it dry in between. That's the important part, right? So then you splash on this rubbing alcohol. You can do it with a spray bottle or put some in your hand. Just go like that. A couple drops right out of the bottle, rubbing alcohol, and you get these bubbles. Let it dry in between coats, right? And then you do some negative shape painting. There's got to be a flower in there somewhere, and you look at it, and all of a sudden you see it. You see it. And you do some negative shape painting. And this is how I love to do the rest of them. That's how I start. But this is what ends up. Look how different everyone is. Totally different. Some are vases with glass, some are solid, like this pottery. Simple backgrounds. Boy, look at that confusion of wonderful color. So let me show you how I do it, this technique here in my studio. So I take a spray bottle like this with an adjustable nozzle, so it can come out as a fine spray or just kind of little drops. So I put it on the little drops, coarse, okay? Perfect. Isopropyl alcohol sitting in here. Now, on my table, this is watercolor paper, already primed with acrylic gesso, orange acrylic gesso, right? And pretty simple. I'm going to tape it down. This is how I start a painting. This is a great way to start loose like this. Wide brush. And over here I have my ink. This is acrylic ink. You can use acrylic paint of any sort like that, but this happens to be the ink. This is the Holbein ink. I have a big tub of it right here. The most important thing is this is the alcohol, the rubbing alcohol, the isopropyl alcohol. Okay, here we go. Now, every time it's going to be different. It's just going to be different. So I'm going to put it on really thick over here. At one spot, I'm going to start adding more water to it now. Making it more water. And even more water. So it's hardly any pigment in there at all. At one spot, it's going to be beautiful, absolutely perfect. So you can see I'm putting it on real heavy over here. And as I go across the page, it gets lighter. So you'll see why, because here comes the alcohol. Now you don't go right up to it like this. I'm standing back, and it's literally just dripping. You'll see the effect. So it's almost comes across as an arc from the alcohol bottle. And everyone is different. They all respond. See, this is so thick, it can hardly move. When you start adding water to it, it gets thinner and thinner. And see, and it just keeps growing like this. Wait for a minute or so, come back and do it again, if you want. You see? You have to be patient. I do several of these at the same time, you know? Here's one, black. There's a black gesso. Let's do this. Only this time I'm going to put some white. Oh, cool, white on this. I'm just gonna pour it. This is the ink again. Shake it a little bit like this. Let me see, here we go. Oh yeah, whoa. This is the Holbein ink. Look how opaque it is. This looks great. Okay, so lightly, right? What I'm demonstrating here is lightly. Don't push your brush in, like scrumbling it. Just lightly. There we go. Now it's going to be working perfectly in one place. I don't know where it's going to work. Here comes the alcohol. Ah. Oh. It's always a fun surprise. Look, it's snowing. See, different effects. Wow, that's far out. Now that was black gesso. See the dramatic effect? When this all dries, it will look just like this. And then I'll put another color on top of that. Maybe the hot pink on top of that. Do the same effect. Put it on thick, add more water to it so it's uneven, and you're going to get different bubbles, so to speak. So that's how I do the paper to get it ready to do negative shape painting. Let me take one and get it finished for you right here. And now, negative shape painting. Here we go. Here's one of my examples. It's all dried. All the layers were dried. These are my acrylic paints. These are the Holbein acrylic paints. I like them because they have so much pigment. And dollops of white, green, some black, some opera, hot pink, and some marigold. Here we go. Now, I like to look at this for a while and say, well, there's got to be a vase of flowers in there somewhere. Here we go. Now, the white will make it opaque. And what I want to do is kind of a green and a little bit of black in here. Kind of a neutral green, gray. There we go. Do all your mixing, of course, on the table, your palette, not on here. Make sure I have lots of it ready to go. Now I'm going to try and find, this is where I like to make it all up. Work quickly. I try and see it quickly. Yeah. And maybe, yeah. Something like that, yeah. Cool. Well, it's coming together. See how that works? I love negative shape painting. Whoa, look at that one. This is like going out there finding other flowers. They weren't there before, and that's your job. Make it visually exciting and memorable, mostly. Don't make it so boring. So I hear what I'm working into, looking at the overall negative shape. Now let some of the background cut in there. And again, I'm still making it a light background color. Let some of the other color come through. I like that energy of coming through the solid area. Has a real painterly quality to it. Whatever that means. There we go. And now the table, I'm just going to make it a lighter surface using the same color. You know, I might just add a little bit of marigold to this, just so it's not so pure white. There we go. Now the white has a little bit of life to it, not so white. All right, so I'm going to say that here's the back edge of the table. Make it soft. And over here, back edge of the table. It's close enough, huh? And now the bottom of the vase, let's give it a radius. Make sure it's a radius bottom. And I'm going to utilize this as the shadow later on. There we go. Now, of course, that's not going to be the shadow color, but that's to remind me to go back in there. Now, this is a good time to do things like at the back edge of your brush. Like it's a pattern. I'm going to have it come straight at you. Just for a little bit of texture. Since we're putting texture up there, why not bring some into the tablecloth? Kind of a nice balance in here. Now I need to get a focal point in here. And I want to put this, not that color. I want to do a little bit of this, maybe a little bit of that. Just a little bit of darkness down here. And as it gets further away, it gets softer. This way you anchor it by putting a little dark line underneath, just like that. It helps to anchor it so it's not floating up in the sky. Now I'd like to get a focal point right in here. And it's going to be pretty obvious. I'll put it right here in the golden section. There you go. Now you augment that with some stuff going on over here. Bounces it out. And I might want to highlight a hot spot over here. Bring some up in here. This side of the vase will be brighter because that's where the light's coming from. Just a little bit like that. Because I know that because the shadow's going away. And there, I'll stop at this point. It's pretty obvious where I want the eye to go, huh? And there you go. It's really hard to stop on things like this. And that's how I take the rubbing alcohol, throw it on top of a acrylic prime watercolor piece of paper, let it dry, start throwing the isopropyl alcohol on top of the whole thing. And if you have the patience, let it dry in between each one, and voila, you start having a lot of more creative fun. I don't copy anything. You can do this in the comfort and safety of your own studio. It's a great time to kind of dance with the paintbrush and dance with more water and more color and more alcohol. Oops. See you on the next BobBlast. Thanks for watching.